For a long time, Emma believed that the fear of rejection was the worst feeling anyone could carry. Today, she knew that was a lie. Rejection was simple. People would walk away, turn their faces away, give up. Acceptance, however, was different. Acceptance came with expectations, overly attentive stares, silent comparisons, and that's where everything began to crumble. She had learned early on not to expect anything from anyone. Perhaps too early. When her own parents kicked her out of the house before she was even 18, something inside her adjusted to survive. Being invisible hurt less. Being disposable was bearable. For 3 years, the owner of the bar where she worked greeted her with the same insult every night. And she agreed, not because she believed she was trash, but because she had already accepted that no one would bother to see her any other way. Then Harry appeared, and loving someone who mattered to so many other people was more terrifying than any rejection she had ever known. Harry wasn't just a man, he was an alpha, a leader, a symbol, a name that carried respect, devotion, and expectation. And along with him came the entire pack, watching Emma as if she were an unstable variable, measuring, comparing, hoping that sooner or later she would be replaced by the obvious choice. Vivien. Vivien was everything Emma wasn't, effortlessly elegant, confident, intelligent, pregnant with the heir to one of the pack's most respected bloodlines. The woman everyone believed Harry would eventually choose, if the universe were fair, if things made sense, if Emma weren't there occupying a space that clearly didn't seem meant for her. Emma sensed it in the polite smiles that lasted a second less than they should have, in the glances that swept over her as if searching for flaws. They didn't need to say anything. The expectation of failure was deafening. Harrow family mansion loomed before her as a physical reminder of all of this. The place wasn't a house. It was a monument. Stone towers rose against the grey mountain sky, as if someone had decided that even Christmas needed to look intimidating. Emma stopped beside Chloe, craning her neck, trying to comprehend how this could be called a chalet without irony. "This isn't a house," he murmured. "It's a hotel, disguised as a social trauma." Chloe laughed, somewhat embarrassed, adjusting her scarf. Damen, impeccably dressed in his expensive coat, far too cold for the weather, surveyed the building as if he were looking at a charming warehouse. Emma decided to ignore him. It was becoming a comfortable habit. She checked her cell phone. No messages. Harry was supposed to have arrived the day before. His absence weighed on Emma's chest like something physical. 6 weeks had turned into vague promises, into soon, into very soon. And now she was there, alone, for the first time truly alone within his world. The interior of the mansion offered no respite. People came and went with boxes, garlands, clipboards, overly decorated trees. It didn't look like a family gathering. It looked like the preparation for an event that no one had told Emma she would be responsible for organizing. "What is all this?" she asked, already suspicious. The answer came too quickly. "Here you are, Luna." The title fell upon him as if it didn't belong to him. Emma blinked, confused, as Chloe quietly explained the obvious, something no one had bothered to explain before. Harry was the alpha. That made her Luna. The word carried a heavy weight of meaning, function, and expectation, and no one seemed to question whether she wanted that. Questions began to arise: seating arrangements, dinner time, the order of traditions. Each new demand piled on top of the panic that was silently growing inside her. She had barely set foot there. Then the door opened again, and Harry's adoptive parents entered, bringing with them a silent judgment that Emma recognized immediately. The kind of look that assessed, measured, and decided before even hearing a word. And right behind them, as if the universe wanted to be cruel on purpose, Vivien appeared. Perfect. Serene. Pregnant. In the exact place everyone expected her to be. When Vivien announced with an overly practiced smile that she had already ensured everything was under control, because this was Emma's first time organizing a packed Christmas, Something silently broke inside Emma. She understood at that moment that it wasn't about help. It was control, disguised as kindness, and when Vivien handed her the responsibility for the napkins, just the napkins, Emma was certain of one thing. Acceptance had arrived, and she was far more dangerous than rejection had ever been. Before we continue, check if you're already subscribed to the channel and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. I always like to know how far these stories reach. Vivien always knew that there were truths that didn't survive the light. Some not because they were false, but because they were too big to fit into a single reality. She woke up every day with the same feeling, as if she were living inside something fragile, a hastily assembled structure, sustained more by will than by logic. The world functioned. People smiled. The pack followed clear rules. Emma breathed, walked, laughed, alive. But Vivien remembered. I remembered the world before. In that other version of reality, the choices had been different. More honest, perhaps, or more selfish, hard to say. What she knew with a painful clarity was that she had chosen Jake when she shouldn't have, not out of pure love, but out of fear. Fear of the chaos Harry carried. Fear of the intensity he awakened in her and in Emma. Separating them seemed at the time a necessary evil. In that reality that no longer existed, Emma had not only suffered, she had almost died. The accident, or whatever it was, still echoed in Vivien's mind like a scream trapped in time. Too much blood, too much silence. The brutal feeling that the world had shattered because of her decision. When everything was reset, nobody noticed, except for her. Vivien was the only one who crossed unscathed. Therefore, control was never a personality trait. It was a survival mechanism. Every rule he imposed, every limit he drew around Emma, every decision made in the name of protection was, in fact, a desperate attempt to prevent the past from repeating itself. She didn't see herself as a villain, but he also wouldn't allow himself to be naive. Jake knew, not everything, never everything, but enough. He noticed Vivien's lapses, the silences that were too long, the way she reacted before something happened, as if she anticipated invisible tragedies. He never asked directly, perhaps out of fear of the answer, perhaps because deep down he understood that this reality only continued to exist because Vivien was willing to carry the weight of the previous one alone. Pregnancy had become the anchor. While that life grew inside her, Vivien believed that the world would remain stable, as if time itself had made a pact. As long as the future was being created, the past would not dare to return. Emma, on the other hand, was the weak point. Vivien watched Emma's every move with excessive attention, correcting her course before it was chosen, interfering in conversations that hadn't yet taken place. She called it caring. But deep down, she knew she was trying to mold Emma so that she would never become the woman who, in another reality, had been destroyed for loving the wrong person. What Vivien wouldn't admit, not even to herself, was that this control also concealed jealousy. Not Emma's, but more than what Emma and Harry represented together, something that no reality seemed able to completely erase. There were signs. Small deviations in the fabric of the world, a gaze held for too long, a collective shiver in the pack, shared dreams that no one could explain. Vivien felt these signs like cracks beneath her feet, and then came the certainty. Harry was coming back, not as a simple physical return, but as an event, a turning point, something that the world itself seemed to recognize as dangerous. Vivien felt it before any announcement. Her body reacted first. Nausea, a tightness in her chest. The same sensation from the other reality, seconds before everything crumbled. That's when she understood. The real conflict was never romantic rivalry. It was never Emma versus her. It was guilt. Guilt for having chosen. Guilt for having separated. Guilt for having survived a world that should not have been erased. Harry was not just a returning alpha. He was the variable that shouldn't exist in a reality built on negation. If he crossed over completely back into that world, the layers could overlap. Memories could leak out. Choices could rewrite themselves. Vivien realized, with silent terror, that this reality was not stable. It was temporary, and she had been kept alive by force. Protecting Emma now meant something far more cruel than simply pushing her away. It meant keeping her ignorant, because if Harry remembered, nothing could guarantee that the world would survive the truth. At the end of that day, alone, Vivien placed her hand on her belly, as if apologizing to something that hadn't even been born yet. She'd done everything to save that reality, but I understood too late that some stories simply cannot be corrected, just repeated. And at that moment, Vivien had the most terrifying realization of all. Harry's return could undo everything, not just the balance of the pack, not just carefully controlled relationships, but it was the very reality she had been trying to maintain with guilt, silence, and distorted love. And perhaps, just perhaps, the world was finally ready to demand its price. Nothing happens all at once when a reality begins to fail. First, it fails at the edges. Emma was the first to feel it. Not fear, nor clear suspicion, but a persistent feeling of losing ground, as if her presence were being slowly edited out. Conversations that died midway, decisions made without consulting her, eyes that averted when she entered a room. She still existed, but something within her was being silenced. Vivien called it care. Emma began to call it suffocation. The discussions started small. Simple questions received overly long, carefully constructed answers, as if Vivien were always explaining something Emma hadn't even asked. Each sentence was laden with justifications, with a protective tone that was no longer convincing. And behind all of that, there was a sense of urgency. Vivien spoke as if trying to buy time, as if the world were counting down. Jake realized it even before admitting it to himself. The tension wasn't just emotional, it was structural. The pack reacted to the Alpha's prolonged absence with restlessness, veiled disputes, and hierarchical shifts that shouldn't be happening so soon. The territory seemed unstable. The younger wolves were agitated. The older ones were too quiet. Something was wrong at the heart of it all, and Vivien was failing to keep the seams closed. She began to lose control at unexpected moments. Her voice would rise without warning. Her hands trembled. Her gaze, once calculated, now betrayed panic. Emma began to notice clear contradictions, stories that didn't align, memories that changed shape depending on who was listening, until a word slipped out: reality. Vivien used it like someone stepping into forbidden territory and only realizing it afterward. She tried to correct it, rephrase it, explain it, but it was too late. The word remained suspended between them, like a scent impossible to ignore. Emma did not confront him at that moment, but something inside her responded. First came the dream. She ran through a forest she didn't recognize, but which her body knew intimately. The air was thicker, the sky darker. There was pain in her chest, a physical, concrete pain whenever a presence moved away. When she awoke, her heart pounded as if she had lost something real. Then came the instincts, exaggerated reactions to the approach of certain places, a deep discomfort when someone mentioned Harry's imminent return, as if her body remembered before her mind, as if something in the bond between them was being pressed from the other side of the veil. Emma started connecting the dots, and Vivien began to fall apart. The discussions were no longer veiled. They became direct, cutting, laden with accusations that weren't named, but were felt. Emma began to ask not only what, but why. Why certain choices, why certain prohibitions, why Harry was always the subject that ended any conversation. Jake, caught between the two, finally understood. These weren't ordinary secrets. There was something bigger at stake, something that concerned not just the pack, but the very logic of the world they inhabited. And then came the most dangerous period of all, the one where everything seemed like a celebration on the outside, but was pure tension on the inside. Every gesture had a hidden message, every word the potential for rupture. The return of the alpha ceased to be merely political, it became emotional, symbolic, a minefield where any misstep could detonate truths that no one knew how to contain. Emma felt as if she were on the verge of remembering something forbidden. Vivien felt as if she was about to lose everything. The final confrontation between them wasn't explosive, it was silent, cruel in the most intimate way possible. Emma didn't accuse anyone. She asked if anyone had ever chosen for her. She asked if her life had always truly been her own. She asked why she felt she had survived something she didn't remember. Vivien tried to deny it, but the body betrayed the lie. Her hand instinctively went to her belly, a small gesture, automatic, and Emma understood, not everything, but enough. Someone had interfered with his destiny. Someone had rewritten something that didn't belong to them. And this person wasn't just carrying a child. It carried the weight of a fabricated reality, pregnant not only with life, but with a world that shouldn't exist. And somewhere between fear and fury, Emma felt the truth approaching, alive, pulsating, ready to break what remained of the silence. Harry's return was no longer just imminent. It was inevitable. The truth didn't come as a shock. It came as recognition. When Harry crossed back to the pack's boundary, the world didn't tremble. He breathed awkwardly, as if something ancient had been put back in its place after being forced off axis for too long. Emma felt it before she understood. Her body responded with a dull, deep pain located somewhere between her chest and her memory. Harry didn't seem confused. It seemed incomplete. There was something about him that resisted the present, as if each step were a silent negotiation with another version of himself. His eyes scanned familiar faces with a minimal, almost imperceptible delay, but enough to betray that part of him was looking through, not at the now, but at what had been erased. Vivien knew she had lost the moment he returned, not because he looked at Emma, but because the world reacted to him. The fissures she had been feeling finally opened up, not as visible cracks, but as lapses, repeated phrases, displaced smells, memories that surfaced without origin. Reality was ceasing to obey her. Jake finally heard everything. Vivien didn't beg. She didn't dramatize. She recounted it as if confessing to a crime she'd already served time for every day since it happened. She spoke of the other timeline, of the choice, of the separation, of Emma's near-death experience, of the reset. And then she revealed what even she herself had not dared to name until that moment. The baby was more than just a life. It was an anchor. That reality remained stable only because something within it belonged to the space between worlds. Not entirely from that timeline, not entirely from the previous one. A hybrid existence born from error, sustaining error. If that life ceased to exist, the world would correct itself. Harry, then, ceased to be just an alpha. He was the point of correction. If she recovered her memories, the entire system would react. The layers would overlap. Emma would remember. The current reality would collapse. Vivien would lose everything: position, control, justification. And the baby, perhaps it would never have been possible in a world that refused to continue being wrong. If he didn't remember, everything would continue as before. Emma would live a coherent, functional, seemingly just life, built upon a theft she would never know how to name. The truth would die without scandal. Injustice would win without resistance. There was no good option. The full revelation did not free anyone. She simply took away the right to pretend. Emma listened in silence. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't accuse Vivien of being the sole villain, because now she understood that woman hadn't acted out of hatred. She had acted out of fear, and out of guilt, and out of a desperate attempt to save someone, even if that someone had never asked to be saved in that way. When he spoke, it was simple. She said she felt the robbery. She felt it in the emptiness, in the interrupted dreams, in the physical pain that arose without explanation when Harry came near. She said that something inside her had always known that surviving wasn't the same as living fully. Harry did not ask for forgiveness. To ask would be to assume that there was a choice beforehand. Now, the choice rested solely with Emma. Vivien tried to argue, not on her own behalf, on behalf of the baby, of stability, of the world that still functioned, of the price that was too high for everyone to pay. Emma heard everything, and he responded with the one thing no one expected. She chose to know, not because the truth would save anything, not because love would conquer, not because suffering would be rewarded, but because living a comfortable lie was a slow form of disappearance. She didn't want to be protected, she wanted to be whole. Harry closed his eyes when the decision was spoken aloud. Something inside him gave way. It wasn't an explosion, it was a snapping together. The memories didn't come as organized scenes, but as pain, as an absence forcibly filled, as a belated recognition of a bond that never ceased to exist. Emma remembered, and remembering wasn't pretty. It was harsh. It was unfair. It was everything Vivien tried to prevent. The world reacted, not in flames, nor in immediate chaos, but in structural silence, as if reality were recalculating. Vivien felt the ground disappear beneath her feet before any visible consequences could occur, not because she had lost power, but because she had lost the meaning of what she believed she was saving. For the first time, there was no longer any control possible. The baby moved, and no one could tell if it was a continuation or a farewell. The world was not saved, but it's not over yet. He moved on, different, unstable, too honest to promise happy endings. Emma wasn't forgiven by everyone. Vivien wasn't completely destroyed. Harry wasn't a hero. Nothing fit into redemption. But for the first time since the beginning, reality was not sustained by silence. And Emma, even wounded, even alone in places where no one could accompany her, remained. Not because he won, but because he refused to disappear inside a well-constructed lie. And that, only that, was the choice. Thanks for staying until the end. There are always more supernatural stories waiting for those who come back. See you in the next video.